AP Calculus, definite integration. Find the area enclosed by the graphs of y equals the square root of x and y equals x cubed. This is most likely to show up on the multiple choice section of your exam in an area where you will not be able to use your calculator. So hopefully, we've prepared ourselves to be able to see these graphs in our heads a little bit. Drawing this picture would not hurt us, would it? We know that the square root of x function looks like this, doesn't it? Right? Looks like this, right? Right, it has this basic shape, doesn't it? Like that. Yeah? And so let this be square root of x. It's my approximation of that curve. And let this be x cubed. X cubed looks like that, doesn't it? Just it does this, and it does that. So, just knowing what we know that we want this area in here, this little fish-looking thing, right? So we want this area right in here, right? So this is the area that we're looking for right here, right in there. So this is what's really important to me that you understand, is that what I'm doing here is this. I'm trying to figure out which graph is on top of which. So I'm going to set this up, and I'm going to say x squared. I'm going to say x to the 1/2. That's the square root of x, isn't it? Equals x cubed. Because the x cubed function is underneath of it, I'm going to subtract it over. I'm going to get the square root of x minus x cubed is equal to 0. And I can actually solve this. Think about this for a second. 3 is the same as 6 over 2. And I'm just doing 6 over 2 because there's a 2 here and there's a 2 here. And we know how exponents work, right? So I'm going to factor out x to the 1/2 power times 1 minus x to the, well, 1/2 times 1/2 plus what is 6 halves is 5 halves, isn't it? Is equal to 0. So when we look at these factors now, we know that x is equal to 0. Or here, x is equal to 1. And you can test that. So we know that these bounds that we're looking for, because we're trying to figure out, right, we're trying to figure out the integral, the interval, these points, this one and this one, so we can decide where to evaluate from. This is 0 and this is 1. And you can go back and check. Square root of 1 is equal to 1 to the 3rd power. And yes, it is. All right, so this is what we figured out, I hope. Now we're going to start to set up our integral here. So we're going to say from 0 to 1. 0 because this is the left bound. 1 because this is the right bound, right? We looked and we figured out that this function is under this one. So we'll take the one on top first, and we'll have x to the 1/2. And if you're wondering why I took it out from underneath the radical, it's because I'm going to integrate. And when we start to integrate, we want those things up the best that we can get them. This one, just keep it as x to the 3rd power, if you don't mind, dx. So hopefully you can see that we've prepared ourselves to integrate here, haven't we? Because this expresses this question here, right? This is this area in here, right? So I'm going to go ahead and integrate. And we're going to integrate using our rules of integration here. This becomes x to the 3/2 over 3/2, and I'm going to fix that in a second, minus x to the 4th over 4 as evaluated from 0 to 1. So now we finally set ourselves up so we can use the fundamental theorem of calculus, right? So now we're going to go back and say this was our goal the whole time, is to get to this fundamental theorem of calculus right here, right? Now hopefully this is not taking us long. And then we're going to go ahead and evaluate this. First thing I'm going to do is bring this thing up, right? So this is going to come out to be, right? This is going to come up, it's going to be 2/3, isn't it? X to the 3/2 minus x to the 4th, right? This is just me cleaning up a complex fraction, right? You bring this up as its reciprocal, so I just brought this up as its reciprocal. Okay? If you have a question about that, please let me know. And I'm going to evaluate f of 1. So f of 1, right? F of 1, if x is 1, right, this just becomes 2/3. If this was 1, 1 to the 4th is still 1, minus 1/4, isn't it? Minus, we need f of 0. But if we take a really quick look, see f of 0 becomes irrelevant because this whole thing is going to be 0, right? This goes to 0, and this will go to 0. So this is just minus 0 here, isn't it? In this particular case. It's not always the truth. I have to set this up a little bit. I'm going to change these fractions, and 2/3 is the same as 8/12, isn't it? And 1/4 is the same as 3/12, isn't it right? 3/12. And 8/12 minus 3/12 is 5/12, and there's our solution. Okay? All right, you guys. You gotta see so many of these problems that you can kind of do this in your sleep, because he's going to show up on the AP exam on the multiple choice part, and you just really have to be able to power through them. So if you're kind of getting this one, go find 10 more of them and work those out until it kind of sticks in your head, because on the AP exam, you're not going to have time to figure it out. You're going to have to kind of have it done. So I hope this is helpful, and if it is, please subscribe and like my video.